It is my pleasure to be here today on behalf of California State University Northridge and President Diane Harrison to explore what it takes for women to overcome challenges and to gain a deeper perspective on what women can do to empower other women. I would like to acknowledge today's co-host, CSUN's David Nazarian College of Business and Economics, led by our visionary dean, Chandra Subramanian. Offering a challenging curriculum, smaller class sizes, thank you, state-of-the-art facilities, and nationally recognized programs, the Nazarian College offers a truly unique educational experience. As an institution with women in many senior leadership positions, CSUN is proud to offer this program in partnership with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, known as VICA. CSUN and VICA share a relationship that goes back to the 1950s, when CSUN was then known as San Fernando Valley State College, and VICA was then known as the Industrial Association of the San Fernando Valley. Since that time, CSUN and VICA have worked together to elevate the Valley through opportunity and innovation for businesses and for residents. I'd like to take a moment to share just a few highlights about CSUN. We are one of the largest universities in the country, and we also deliver award-winning undergraduate and graduate programs to nearly 40,000 students annually. 55% of those 40,000 students are women. Since our founding in 1958, CSUN has made significant and long-term economic impact on California, generating nearly $1.9 billion in economic impact and nearly 12,000 jobs each year. As a university, we recognize the value of women's contributions in every field and domain, as well as the need to support and nurture their involvement. We do this through campus entities such as the Women's Research and Resource Center and also Women in Science and Engineering, also known as our WISE program. We are one of the most diverse universities in the country, recently ranked by the Wall Street Journal as second in the nation for our diverse learning environment. CSUN is where individuals rise, and through them, so does Greater Los Angeles and beyond. We are proud of the more than 370,000 CSUN alumni who shape the region and the world. Some of our inspiring Matador women include Andrea Zeckler, the COO and CFO of Epson America and Los Angeles Business Journal's 2019 CFO of the Year. Also, a Matador is Peggy Nelson, a Sector Vice President for Engineering and Global Product Development for Northrop Grumman Aerospace. Janet Garufis is the Chairperson and CEO of Montecito Bank and Trust. And last but not least, Linda Lingle, the former governor of Hawaii, is also a Matador. And the future of tomorrow's alumni look just as bright. Our traditional academic programs are complemented by our award-winning online and graduate school programs for continuing students and professionals that are built on a strong partnership between faculty and students. We also provide flexibility for managing how your education can fit into a working student's demanding life. Please reach out to us to see how we can help your organization and your employees. Let me take a moment now to thank our sponsors for today's event. Our co-sponsors are Hollywood Burbank Airport, and Southern California Gas Company. I would also like to thank our registration sponsors, California Resources Corporation, and Bothing Treeland Farms, as well as Union Pacific. I would also like to thank our centerpiece sponsors, table sponsors, and leadership sponsors who are all listed in your program and on the PowerPoint. Thank you all for sponsoring this wonderful event. I would also like to introduce our elected officials who are with us today. Los Angeles City Councilwoman Nuri Martinez. You will hear more from Nuri in a moment as she is serving as one of our panelists, and I would also like to thank Councilman John Lee for joining us for lunch this afternoon. One last reminder for those of you who may have missed it, we have a raffle drawing at the end of the program. We will be awarding 2 tickets to Six Flags Magic Mountain, 2 tickets to the Kirk Douglas Theater, and there is a special secret raffle prize that's been provided by CSUN's very own Soraya Performing Arts Theater. So for those of you who are looking at me like, what is she talking about? I invite you to please drop your business cards at the registration table, or you can give it to a VICA staff member, and remember, you must be present to win. So now that that business is out of the way, I am delighted to introduce to all of you this afternoon Wendy Gruhl, who is the executive in residence at the David Nazarian College of Business and Economics at CSUN. Wendy was born and raised here in the San Fernando Valley, and after graduating from UCLA, she immediately joined the staff of then Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley. She later served in President Bill Clinton's administration as Housing and Urban Development Field Operations Officer for Southern California, where she was instrumental in coordinating HUD's emergency response and recovery programs following the devastating 1994 earthquake. From 1997 to 2002, Wendy worked in corporate affairs for the entertainment company DreamWorks SKG. In 2002, she was then elected to the Los Angeles City Council, where she represented the 2nd District in the Northeast San Fernando Valley until her election as City Controller in 2009. At CSUN, Wendy leverages her professional experience to help the David Nazarian College forge new relationships and launch initiatives that bring value and opportunity to students. She has a particular passion for advancing women in business, and I know that you will appreciate her enthusiasm on that issue today. Please join me in welcoming Wendy Gruhl.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I am so thrilled to be part of this room of incredible business and civic leaders today, and to introduce you to our special guest, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Koulounakis. Yes. I want to first thank our Dean of the Nazarian College of Business at CSUN, Chandra Subramanian, who's been really, I will say, a shining light at our college and incredibly supportive of women in leadership and advancing the goals of ensuring that we have the best educated students who will thrive and succeed in the business world. We have today some wonderful students who I would love to just stand up because you are our future. Could all of our CSUN students that are here today stand up and welcome them for their participation? Our future business leaders. And how many of the rest of you are CSUN alum? Raise your hand. Oh, look at that. Proud matadors. Well, we're so happy to have you here. And I want to say a special thank you to the VICA team and Lisa Gritzner and Stuart Waldman for being our partners in this event today. They really were incredible. This is, I don't know if I should say this, but our first annual, because that means there'll be a second one. But I also want to thank our wonderful CSUN team who are here, who work so hard as well. Thank you very much to both of you for making this a success. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Eleni Koulounakis, who was sworn in as the 50th Lieutenant Governor on January 7th, 2019. And yes, she is the first woman elected Lieutenant Governor. We have high hopes for where you're going next, just saying, being the first. From 2010 to 2013, she served as President Barack Obama's ambassador to the Republic of Hungary. She was the first Greek-American woman at the age of 43 and one of America's youngest to serve as a U.S. ambassador. Governor Jerry Brown appointed Koulounakis to chair the California Advisory Council for International Trade and Investment in 2014. Prior to her public service, she was president of one of California's most respected housing development firms, AKT Development, where she worked for 18 years. She built master planned communities and delivered quality housing to Sacramento's region's working families, recognizing her as one of the most prominent businesswomen, not only in that region, but across the state. But most importantly, Eleni has distinguished herself as someone who is smart, dedicated, tough, visionary, and a leader in our state and our country. She has a true partnership with Governor Newsom, which is really fabulous, and is never afraid, I will tell you this, never afraid to make her voice heard for those of us here in the state of California. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being here today. She has just gotten back from being out of town in Washington, D.C., and is running off to a Cal State board meeting and snuck us in here, but she wanted to be here at our first annual and be supportive of so many women-owned businesses here in Los Angeles and our students. Please welcome the one, the only, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Koulonakis.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to VICA and CSUN for putting on the first annual event, Wendy. So yes, there will be more. There have to be now. But really, I want to address my remarks to the women students who are here in the room today, frankly, because it is always inspiring to me to be with women who are at the start of their careers, ready to launch into the workplace, armed with degrees and training, and ready to see where your journey will take you. Wendy asked that I share a few thoughts about women in leadership and some of the experiences that I have had along the way. Now, in my generation, it's common to hear women say that they never expected to fill in the blank. That's true for me too. Ambassador, Lieutenant Governor, my 15-year-old self, even my 35-year-old self might not have believed it. But from a young age, I always knew that I wanted to work hard. And I was always deeply curious about the world around me. And I had that drive to be part of something bigger than just myself. So hard work, curiosity, and living beyond oneself have all been key factors in my journey. And I hope that today's generation of young women entering the workforce are more likely than mine to own those sentiments and never be surprised where they take you. I often say that jumping into the race for Lieutenant Governor of California as my first campaign for elected office was the least thought through thing that I have ever done in my life. And it's true. It started when my friend, Wendy's friend, lost her election to be the first woman president of the United States. A few weeks later, women around the world marched in what would be the single largest demonstration in the history of the world. And suddenly, we were off. Thousands of women across the country, including me, stood up, stepped forward, pushed all caution aside, ran, and won. During my campaign, I realized that if I made it, I would have a special opportunity, a special platform to talk about women in leadership because, as Wendy mentioned, no woman had ever been elected lieutenant governor before. And over these last few years, especially since taking office, there are a few things that I've learned, and I'd like to share them with you today. First, achieving gender parity in the workplace is one of the best things a company can do to advance the bottom line. There is now an established body of research that points to this fact. Men and women working together side by side in any organization results in the best outcomes. So when you claim your seat at the table, ladies, do so with full knowledge that you are doing the organization a favor. And they can thank you later. But seriously, Believing in your value is an important part of having the confidence to lead. We have the data, we have the research. It's time for women to own the fact that we add our perspective, dedication, ideas, experience, and talents. And these are valuable things. Advancing women is important for the betterment of our organizations and for everything and everyone that we care about. Second, I've also learned this. It's really just still not fair out there. In spite of the tremendous gains for women in business and women in leadership, we are still a good distance away from where we need to be for gender parity. Only 19% of board members of publicly owned companies are women. That's up from 16% in 2015. But only 5% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are women. Here's a data point for you. A CEO of a Fortune 500 company is more likely to be named Jim than to be a woman. Ouch. It used to be that it was more likely you were named Jim or John. But now, being John or being a woman is actually right about the same. In government here in California, our legislature is at its highest point ever of women members, but still, it's only 30%. And when it comes to equal pay, women are still only earning 87 cents on the dollar compared to our male counterparts, and significantly less for women of color. And then there's the issue of choice, and this has to be part of the conversation, because we have to recognize that controlling our reproductive choices is a critical part of the story of women's liberation. And every day, there are people who are trying to take this away. So here's the good news, and this is the third thing that I've learned. Although inequities exist, we have the tools to continue to drive change. I really believe this. At the government level, organizations have sprung up across the country to train women to run for office and help fund their campaigns when they do run. Women in the private sector are getting support from public policy seeking to encourage, urge, and possibly even require companies registered in California or doing business with our state to have women on their boards. These efforts have already resulted in women getting elected, recruited, and promoted, and have caused culture shifts in businesses and organizations ready to step up and make gender parity a reality. It's encouraging, and I'm optimistic, but we have more work to do. And all of you will be called upon in one way or another during your careers to do your part. Which brings me to my final point. In my view, the most powerful tool that women have at our disposal is the easiest one to access. The most powerful tool that we have at our disposal is the easiest one to access, and that is helping each other. So let us recommit ourselves to standing up for one another, encouraging each other, and celebrating each other's successes. Over the years, when I have felt that I wasn't getting a fair shake, I've remembered that feeling when I had the opportunity to help another woman, and it's actually made me feel empowered. Everywhere you look, the potential for sisterhood is right around you. My grandmother in Greece never learned to read. She never learned to write, but she was a very strong woman. And she and the other women in our ancestral village helped each other raise their children, operate their households, make sure everyone had enough food to eat, and help manage personal relationships, which, as you can imagine, could sometimes be fraught. In this modern era, let us band together and support each other in getting raises and promotions and credit for good ideas. And when we have the opportunity, let's support each other in elections. And for goodness sake, let's elect a woman president of the United States some point in our lifetimes. Thank you again so much for having me. Good luck to all of you. And Wendy, I hope to be back for the 2nd and 3rd and 4th annual conferences. Thank you.
We have a small token here. That's the right one, okay.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. And that was wonderful for you sharing. And I think it's Madeline Albright who said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women. Just saying. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. And we look forward to you coming next year. That was inspiring. And your story really is an important one to tell for women all across the state, and particularly for the women here in this room, and for some of our good guys that are here today. It is my pleasure to introduce, and before I do that, I want to not forget, Elise Buckley-Weber, who is Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Agoura Hills, is here. She's in the back here. Welcome, one of our other elected officials. And she told me that next, I'm not going to get all of them, but like Calabasas, Agoura Hills, Thousand Oaks, and maybe one other, will all have women mayors next year. So watch out for that region. It is now my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine from a very long time ago, as well as someone who has led VICA in this last year as the chair of this board, and is one of those that is also an inspirational woman to all of us, who steps up and uses her voice for good. And we're so happy to be able to partner with her, my friend Lisa Gritzner. We did it. This is the first annual VICA and CSUN sponsored women's event. And I will tell you, as chair of VICA, this was something that I wanted to do from the very beginning. It was born out of the fact that so many women who are involved with VICA and on the board and the executive committee, many of whom are here in this room today and who have joined us to be sponsors and panelists and other things, came to me and said, seeing you as the chair of VICA, I see someone who I can relate to. I see someone who I can, a role in this organization that I can aspire to. And I really never had thought that much about it until those folks came to me, and I realized I have an obligation to try to create something that brings the women of VICA together, and with our friends, our male friends and spouses and coworkers and all of that, so that we can celebrate the amazing things that the women in the San Fernando Valley and in Los Angeles are doing. And so it gives me such great joy that you are all here today. A couple people, and I won't name any names, Frank Lopez, said that they were surprised at how many people were in the room today. And I'm not surprised, but I certainly am grateful, because this is an amazing first start for us. And I couldn't do this without the amazing Wendy Gruhl, because I learned a long, long time ago that you never say no to Wendy Gruhl. So with her as my co-pilot, it made this, frankly, rather easy and really a delight. So thank you so much, Wendy, for co-chairing this with me. And to Chandra Subramaniam, hope I got that right, from CSUN, and to the entire CSUN team. This was actually sort of a little bit of serendipity, because Wendy and I were talking randomly at an event one time, and I told her that, VICA was looking to do this event, and she said, oh, CSUN's looking to do an event. And so actually it was sort of two great minds and two great organizations coming together, and I think you can see that the results are really amazing. So thank you. And also I want a special shout out to the VICA team, in particular Jessica Yasukochi and Kathy Mendoza, for they make this stuff look easy, and it is not. So I'm just so thrilled. And
Also, I'm extremely thrilled because Miriam Brown is here to join us today. And I've had the chance to meet Miriam early on as she came here. She's traveled from Washington, D.C. and moved to Los Angeles with her family to take this amazing leadership role at SoCalGas. And from the very first time I met her, I was just so blown away and impressed. And so when we were brainstorming who was going to be our keynote speaker, I, of course, piped up and was like, well, if Miriam will do it, then I think she should be our keynote. So truly, truly thankful that you're here to join us today. Before joining SoCalGas as its president, Miriam was the vice president of the Federal Government Affairs for Sempra Energy, which is a parent company. And prior to joining Sempra, she served as the Senior Energy and Environment Counsel for the Office of the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. From 2011 to 2012, she was the Energy Chief Counsel for the U.S. House Committee on Energy and Commerce. These are a lot of things to be doing. From 2010 to 2011, she was Policy Counsel for the U.S. Senate Republican Policy Committee. And before that, gosh, she must have been exhausted before that. Before that, she was Manager of Public Policy and Strategic Planning for ConocoPhillips. She serves on the board of directors of the California Chamber of Commerce and the California Business Roundtable. She holds both a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a law degree from Louisiana State University. So, I think that we are all very excited to have you here with us today. Please welcome me in joining Miriam Brown.
Thank you, Lisa, for that introduction. It is a privilege to be with you all here today. As Lisa said, I'm Miriam Brown, and I'm president of SoCalGas, the largest natural gas utility in North America, providing energy to 20 million consumers from Fresno to the border at Mexico. And we proudly serve San Fernando Valley. Thank you. I came into this role as president of SoCalGas about 8 months ago. As Lisa said, I uprooted my family to take on a role that has given me the opportunity to learn a lot of new things. One of the things that I have been learning is about the breadth and diversity of Southern California. And I want to narrow that to San Fernando Valley. In preparation for this event and being with you all, I did a little of my own research to understand what comprises the San Fernando Valley. And thankfully, it does not begin and end with the Kardashians. San Fernando Valley, home to 1.8 million people. If it was a city, it would be the 5th largest city in the country, but because the 4th largest is city of Los Angeles proper, it sometimes struggles for its voice to be heard, and I want to come back to that point. San Fernando Valley also enjoys incredible diversity, 41% Latino, 13% Asian, 5% Black, and a tremendous cultural center to Armenian and Persian cultures, which I am a member of one of those cultures. And unlike some in Washington, D.C., I think everyone in this room takes the position that that is something to be celebrated and not something to be feared. And I think you see the proof in the economic landscape that we enjoy here in the Valley. The San Fernando Valley is home to more Fortune 500 companies than any other area in Los Angeles County. And you know that it is the motion picture capital of the world, home to Pixar and Marvel Brothers, Marvel and Warner Brothers, and NBC that I think is here, and CBS. But as big as the motion picture industry is in this area, the economy is so broad that last year the Valley had the highest economic growth of any other area in LA County, and it was driven by the tech sector. And I think what this tells you is that the economy, like our population, is diverse, and that's a sign of a very healthy economy. Despite these positives, there are definitely issues. There is an erosion of the middle class. There is a decrease in family median incomes and an increase in housing prices and an increase in homelessness. And thankfully, VICA works every day to bridge this gap. So thank you very much for the work that VICA does in the Valley. I have also come to learn that this is a community that has had to deal with gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching adversity. The borderline shooting last year, the Woolsey fire, and the shooting just last week at the high school in Santa Clarita is shocking to all of us here in the Los Angeles County area and in the country. But in response to this adversity, what is important about the Valley is their resiliency to overcome challenges. And then it hit me as it relates to this event. Adversity, the resiliency to overcome adversity, fighting for our voice to be heard. Where is this more common than these are the very shoes that women walk in? And they're not just Jimmy Choo shoes either, right? These are the shoes that women walk in of all socioeconomic strata, which brings us to today, an event hosted by VICA and CSUN to help us learn from each other, to help us to see that our network is strong and it is growing, and to be a resource to each other. And I feel humbled to have the potential to be a resource to some in this room. So background on me, both of my parents are from Iran. They came here in the 1960s for school and to make a better life. And there is a glamorous side to being first generation. It's the idea of the pioneering spirit. But there is also an unglamorous side, and that is the idea of no safety net. And no safety net means no network. You have to create one. And it takes a lot of hard work to create a network, and I know that everybody in this room is in different stages of that work, developing a network. And a strong network has been absolutely essential to my professional growth. My academic background, as Lisa said, is in engineering and the law. And my career path has been a series of purposeful, but not prescribed steps to get to where it is that I am. And where it is that I am is a career that I very much love. And I love it because I believe in the product that I sell, that we sell. I believe in the quality of life that it provides when it is provided safely. And I believe in the freedom that it affords when it is provided affordably. It truly fuels me. I also believe in the importance of mentorship, and I have been the beneficiary of mentorship since high school all the way through to this point in my career, and I believe in the importance of giving back to thank those who mentored you. I vividly remember early in my law school career, a law school professor who would become a very big mentor of mine. And I was burdened with a tremendous workload and a lot of pressure to perform at school. And my professor said, when you don't know where it is to start, take a breath and be thankful for that breath. And I know that so many of you in this room know this feeling, and to this day, that is advice that serves me in the work that I do. So, what advice do I have to share? I think the advice I'm going to share is going to come in 4 categories. The first is to our most honored guests at this lunch, the students from CSUN that are early in your career, making your way. My primary advice is to stretch, be flexible. Allow yourself to be surprised at what you may be good at. It would be highly unusual for you to already know what it is that quickens your pulse and makes you want to get up and go to work the next day. And I will give you an example of that in my own life. My background is in engineering and the law, but I spent the large bulk of my career in Washington, D.C. in some very senior public policy roles. When I got to Washington, and I spent that time weaving the law with politics and policy. And when I got to Washington, D.C., issues like politics and policy, they were cases of first impression for me. But it turned out that I liked it, and maybe I had a knack for it. And I found that following the river and taking me to that career path, it was one that suited me. So I think what my advice would be is that you might be surprised if you allow yourself to allow the river to take you where it takes you. So remember this advice as don't fight the river. Now, one thing I want to be clear about in the advice about don't fight the river, there is a difference between complacency and destiny, and you will know when you reach those junctures as you make decisions in your career. Second piece of advice, and this one is for the women in the middle stages of our careers. And to me, this can be one of the most challenging stages of our careers because we don't have clear benchmarks in the same way. Your next position, your next title, your next salary, these are undefined. What is my next step up? And how should that next step up be valued? And my advice on this one is to bet on yourself. And what do I mean by that? I'll share a story and then get back to what I mean by that. So I was in a very senior position in government service, and I was up for a promotion to a very, very coveted energy policy position in Washington, D.C. One could say that it is the ultimate energy policy position in Washington, D.C. And when I was given the initial offer to replace the gentleman that I would be replacing, they offered me $10,000 less than what the gentleman that I would be replacing was making. And I was as qualified as him, if not more qualified. Was I offered less because I was a woman? Was I offered less because my income was seen as supplementary to my husband's? Who knows, but in my view, who cares? It matters less the why, what matters is the what. I respectfully declined the offer. I was comfortable betting on myself, and I was comfortable that I knew, that they knew, that I had what it was that they needed for that job. And I was uncomfortable taking a job where I felt like I was undervalued walking into it. So 20 minutes later, they called me back and met my number, and I took the job. And it was one of the greatest professional experiences. So bet on yourself. What does that mean? I gave you a story that was a pay equity story, but pay equity is a secondary point. The larger point on bet on yourself is that knowing the value that you bring to the table. So, third piece of advice. This one is for the women in public service or those contemplating public service. And I think this one is particularly important because I think it's unfortunate that public policy has started to be trivialized, its role and its importance in society. And I think that that may run the risk of dissuading our best and our brightest, our CSUN students that are here today, dissuading our best and brightest from answering the call of public service. So I want to speak to that. Let me take a moment to salute those women in this room and leaders that chose to take this path. The Lieutenant Governor that just had to leave, but Ms. Wendy Gruhl, Ms. Weber, Ms. Diaz, Ms. Martinez, and John Lee. The public trust that you hold in your hand is an important, important burden. And I can't imagine a time that is more important for women to have a voice at the table than now in the public policy space. Except for CD12. Except for CD12. So, as I say this, I think about my own experience on Capitol Hill. My political counterpart, she should have been my mortal enemy. And she was anything but. Why? The reason why is relationships. She and I took the time to get to know one another. And then when we faced the difficult issues where we needed to negotiate a deal, we had a baseline of trust that made it a place to be able to work that deal. And I think that women, it is our nature to value relationships. We value them from the start, from the playground to the playing field. And I think this makes a significant difference in how we approach issues. And this value that political leaders bring to the table is not limited to women's issues. We bring diversity of perspective that is needed to address the most complicated issues that we're facing here locally in the Valley, that we're facing at the state level, and that we face nationally. The fourth piece of advice, and this is my last of my pieces of advice, I will refer to as the WWC. What does WWC stand for? I think at its base, it stands for something that I would call woman-on-woman competitiveness. And there may be some gradations of it, but at its base, that's what it stands for. And what I'm referring to here, and I think the women in the room, many of them would understand what this is that endless competitiveness that we have had since grade school for external validation. Sometimes it's for things like popularity, sometimes it's for other types of things. And as professionals, this competitiveness we have for each other can manifest itself as insecurity, an insecurity that there are a limited number of opportunities for women. And that, in my mind, is becoming a falsity. Now, more than ever, there is a growing recognition of a need for more women's voices in the room and more of that perspective. There is more room at the inn, there are more seats at the table, and if we truly maximize this network, then we will have less sharp elbows with each other and more sisterly helping hands, just like the Lieutenant Governor was talking about. One woman is resilient. Shared resiliency is empowerment. One voice fighting to be heard, it may be heard, but multiple voices cannot be ignored. So, what are the takeaways? Takeaways are, don't fight the river, bet on yourself. Women are needed to influence public policy more than ever, except CD12. And resist that instinct that we have of fighting over a finite set of opportunities. We can all wear pearls because the world is our oyster. I really appreciate your time and the opportunity to share thoughts, and really look forward to this panel with my fellow women leaders.
I think I forgot my paper, so that's a fail. My beautiful assistant, Glenn Gritzner. See how I did that? Just trying to give him a little role to play here. Thank you, honey. And thank you so much to Miriam. That was really great. And please join me in giving another round of applause. We are really very grateful to have your leadership at one of our most important businesses here in Southern California. We're now going to smoothly transition into our panel discussion, so I'm really excited. So if I could invite our panelists to please come up and join me. And while they're coming up here, I wanted to also say thank you so much to our host, Scott Mills from the Garland today. We all love coming here. They always do a great job. Please also, let's give a round of applause for the servers who are here today serving our delicious lunch. And so we are so privileged to have this group of women as part of our panel discussion today. And I'll start with welcoming Los Angeles City Councilwoman Nury Martinez. Nury was the lone woman on the city council for a while, and she's now been joined by Monica Rodriguez. And hopefully there will be many, many more who will come along to help represent our voices. I was lucky enough to serve with some amazing women on the LA City Council, and I know what a difference their voices make. We're also joined by Deanna Austin, and I'm very proud to say that Deanna got a promotion. So she is now the Chief Commercial Officer and Executive Vice President for Princess Cruises, so welcome. She's getting it done. And Rashmi Menon, Vice President for Parsons Corporation, and Rashmi is a VICA board member as well, so thank you so much. So we are planning to have a little bit of time for Q&A, so we're just going to jump right into some questions if you ladies are ready. Each of you has achieved success in your business in non-traditional roles, and I'm curious what sorts of challenges you faced along the way, and maybe Nuri, you could kick us off since you were a pioneer of sorts.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. When I walked in, I was really happy to see a diverse group of women, but primarily it seems like you're all like new faces. Usually you come to these dinners and you see the same people over and over and over again. Not that it's a bad thing, but I'm so happy to see new faces. So it's great to be here this afternoon. And in terms of challenges, I think for me, I've now been in public office for almost 17 years. People forget that there's two other positions that I held, public positions that I've held before I got elected 6 years ago to the LA City Council. I was the only woman there for 4 years, and now I'm the president pro tem of the Los Angeles City Council, and you knock on wood, and I'd be the first Latina council president within the next month or so. But in terms of challenges, I think for me, it's really been about figuring out the balances between my career, my professional ambitions, and balancing my mom life. You know, a lot of people don't, and that's not only for women in public office, but I think it's for any working mom that has to feel like you're carrying everyone's weight on your shoulder. When it comes to balancing your career, and there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but I was one of those women who decided to marry later in life, decided to wait almost 8 years after I was married to have my first baby and my only baby, because I was trying to figure out what that career path looked like for myself. So juggling that mom life and those expectations that women still have to figure out how to do everything and figure out everyone's life is very complicated. So I like to always think of myself as a woman who can do it all, but sometimes messes it up along the way in terms of my mom life. But I think for men, there is a double standard. And there's a double standard, especially in politics, especially for those men who have to travel, whether it be Sacramento or Washington, D.C. If you're married and have a family and children, well, guess what? There's someone at home trying to figure all those pieces out, trying to get kids to school every day, trying to make sure that lunch is packed, trying to make sure there's clean clothes for them to wear. And that double standard does exist for women that are currently serving, working women in general. So I like to say that's probably one of the things that I struggle with the most, is trying to make sure that people understand that, yes, I can do it all, and there's going to be bumps along the way, but that also I'm very lucky to have a partner that doesn't feel insecure or has a problem with me not being home every single night serving dinner and washing dishes and putting my baby to sleep. Although I would love to, but sometimes I just can't do it all. So I think it's that double standard of that women still are expected to figure out how to, show up every day and then make sure that you go home and be that perfect mom and wife. It's difficult.
And also, Nuri is an amazing cook, so if you follow her on Instagram, you can see some of these amazing things that she finds the time to make, which I'm still
It's that 1
stunned.
in the morning, 2 in the morning, you're up, you're thinking of stuff, like let's just bake a cake.
Why not?
I struggle with sleep, so it's okay. Anyone's welcome to text me, I'm up, share recipes online.
Rashmi, can you share a few of the challenges that you've experienced?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, and thanks to VICA for this wonderful event today. So I think maybe I'll take a step back, maybe tell a little story about when I first started my career in construction. I was born and raised in India. I'm a first-generation immigrant, and I went to a good old construction school in Texas A&M, where I was not only the only woman, but I was the only woman of color. And I didn't speak like them, I didn't look like them, and I struggled quite hard to sort of fit in, because I felt I needed to be like them, which obviously I wasn't. Anyway, so one of my first jobs was on a construction site in a small town south of Sarasota called Venice. We were building a public school. And I walked in the day one, and the construction superintendent, good old white boy, really great guy, his name was Steve. He looked at me and he said, I extended my arm and said, "Hi, I'm Rashmi." And he's like, "What?" He said, "What kind of name is that? I'm going to call you Tony." and I was just, for a minute, I had this like, shit, I just want to be Tony. Because it was just so easy to be Tony. And then I sort of said, no, I can't do that. So I stepped up and I said, "No, I'm Rashmi." And it's like, rush me into something, which, by the way, I always say. And for me, it was easy. And I think that was the challenge of trying to fit into a culture, a work culture where there are not others who look like you, there are not others who speak like you. And being someone else was so draining. It was so draining, and I wasn't cool. I could not speak the football lingo. I grew up at cricket. They didn't understand what that was. But I think that's part of it, and some days I still walk into a room, I'm sure many of you do, where you walk in and it's a big group of guys, and no offense to the guys here, I love you all, and you struggle, and they look at you and they say, "Oh, who's taking notes?" And this unconsciously, they're all looking at the woman, and you're like, "I'm not taking notes for you," So I think those challenges that I faced 20 years back on different levels are still there, but what I love now is that we have more women at the table, so you don't feel as alone, as struggling to fit in, because there are others who are, bumping you up.
I love it. Thank you, Rashmi. Deanna. Yeah. And by the way, now we know that we either have to be named Jim or Tony. Ladies, if you're keeping track at home. Deanna, can you talk about some challenges that you faced?
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you for VICA for inviting me, and great stories from you both. It's a pleasure to meet you. So I started out at Princess Cruises 31 years ago as an analyst, and along the way, I would say it's been difficult because the business is typically the ships, which are very authoritarian and very hierarchical in how they look up to the authority figures, whether it was in the office or on the ships. And so for me, working my way up, going to night school to get my MBA at CSUN, I always found it difficult to try to be myself. And we heard the lieutenant governor also say about just be yourself, be true to yourself, because when you are and when you believe in yourself, that is really all that you need to do. And if you're passionate about what you do, if you love what you do, the rest of it comes along the way. And so I would say along the way, there were times when I also felt tempted to be a Tony. and it really doesn't work in the long term. Sure, you can do it for a little while, but then typically you really need to show your true colors, be true to yourself to get the advancements that you deserve.
Excellent. We really cannot have a conversation in this day and age about women in the workplace without acknowledging and talking about the Me Too movement. Many of the people that are perpetuating barriers for women in the workplace are doing so unconsciously. The vast majority of professionals are really not the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, thank God. How can business leaders, and especially women business leaders, identify and raise awareness of these more subtle, but no less real behavioral and structural challenges? Rashmi, why don't you kick us off here?
Most definitely, if there is a situation making a woman or anybody uncomfortable, any kind of harassment, that's absolutely, you need to stand up. But there are some subtle things that happen. I just talked about, unconscious bias of, as you are the woman, maybe you are the note taker kind of thing. I think that's when you can help change that conversation and that narrative. So simple things, I feel like if I'm in a room and, one of my female peers or leaders, she has an idea and people just gloss over. And I see that happening all the time. And then a few minutes later, Jim, poor Jim.
Poor Jim.
Jim says the same thing, and everybody was like, "Oh, Jim, that's a fantastic point." And I'm like, excuse me, Judy just said that 2 minutes back. And why didn't you hear it? So I try very hard to lean forward and say that, exactly that. Jim, thank you for that point. You just reaffirmed what Judy just said a minute back. And I think you need to do that. You absolutely need to do that because these are subtle things that happen daily, every day in conversations in the workplace because, that's how it has been for the longest time. Or like, oh, let's go for, let's have a team event. Oh, everybody's looking at the woman because somehow she's the event planner. I suck at event planning, so I'm kind of like...
But you can build a hell of a bridge, Rashmi.
There you go. So I think we are changing the narrative. I feel highly encouraged where we are today.
Nuri, I know this is an issue that you have taken to the extreme because of your work on trafficking in the community, and I know this is something you're super passionate about, but can you give us some thoughts about how you handle the both conscious and unconscious biases that exist in the workplace?
Well, I think for men and women, I think we need to, if there are concerns of sexual harassment in the workplace, no one should ever feel as if though when they bring their concerns forward that there's going to be any type of retaliation. I think first and foremost, we need to ensure that that is still taking place in the workplace. The other thing I like to talk about is we need to do a better job of raising better men. I don't think we want to talk about that, but I think for those of us who have either experienced it or witnessed it, I think we need to elevate the conversation about what is appropriate behavior or appropriate conversation in the workplace. And I'm no one's police. I certainly don't feel like I have to be. But I think that in this day and age, you cannot get away with that kind of behavior anymore. It is prevalent, whether it's be in politics, the entertainment industry, in corporate America. It's alive and well. People have known it. It's nothing to be shocked about. It's just making sure you call it out. And for me, on the city council, I've spearheaded, avenues in which whenever anyone reports something, there's got to be a system in place where people feel that their complaints, the minute they make them, there is a timely manner by which it's being investigated. You are aware of where your investigation is in the process, and there is closure for either you or the person that's being accused. Everyone should be able to tell you that you made a complaint a month ago, here's where we're at, and we look like there's going to be closure to it within the next 30 days. Everyone should be able to feel that level of comfortness. The other thing I want to raise is I believe that if we had more women in these positions of leadership, there'd be less of this kind of behavior happening. I think women elevate the conversation. We bring a different perspective in the workplace, and I strongly believe that if we had more women in elected office, more women leading some, 5 Fortune companies, some of this behavior just would not take place. Because this is not something we tolerate. I think inherently as mothers, as women, we just call it for what it is. We call the BS, and we put a stop to it as soon as we see it take place. That's what inherently we do as women leaders. So I think that's the next conversation that we need to just make sure that there's more women in leadership positions to call this stuff out. And quite frankly, we just need to do a better job of raising men who don't behave this way.
Amen to that. Deanna, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on this topic?
Sure. So I think you also mentioned how do we identify and raise awareness of it. And what I've done at Princess is, even before I rose to the more senior levels, work with our human resources department to make sure there's training in the company around these kinds of issues and make sure everyone is required to take the training. And so you get to hit the men and the women and raise awareness of what kinds of subtle things or the way things can be interpreted that men may not realize, women may not realize, but it just raises the awareness to a whole new level. And we've done that at our company. I know other companies are starting to do that. But it's so critical to having everyone on the same page and understanding exactly what causes issues. And that way it becomes a very easy way to just approach someone and say, hey, just not acceptable behavior. As you've seen our training. Doesn't work that way. And so it just makes it a much easier and more upfront conversation. So that's one of the things that I think you should look for in the companies that you work for, especially you young students when you go out looking for a job.
I'm going to stick with you, Deanna. Tell us a little bit about the differences between how women and men define success and ambition. And have you noticed that young women or young men make decisions about their careers differently in your time at Princess?
Yeah. I would start out by saying that men and women are just as different in their professional lives as they are in their personal lives. And these differences are really great for business because we need all sorts of different opinions and ideas. Diversity is diversity of thought, of experience, of skills, of cultures, different areas of responsibility around the company. That's what makes for the best ideas. And so even though, men perhaps, one might think I hate to generalize, but tend to be more linear in their thought process where they break down a problem, go component by component, and get to the solution after they understand all the parts. Whereas a woman more typically would probably look at the problem more holistically, may not know every single problem with every component, but understands what the issue is or what needs to get done. And you need a balance of both perspectives, and not only just men and women, but the perspectives that different backgrounds can bring as well. So generally, I would say that these manifest themselves as well in how men versus women value their work. So a man will typically, and I don't mean to generalize for all the men out in the audience here, just from my perspective, they tend to be more around the authority and the power, hierarchy, position, title, those kinds of things, whereas women, as we've said, are more around making friends, being good team members, team players, having recognition for their work, and sharing common goals. And so, you need both of those in any team. You need both of those things to happen, and then together, you can bring forward the best teams. And so I think it works really well in the workplace if you have those kinds of teams set up.
Councilwoman Martinez, what are your thoughts?
This is a great question. So I think we all struggle a little bit with just not shying away from thinking that being powerful is a bad thing. I think powerful is a good thing. I think sometimes we see power as maybe negative, or some people use it to not necessarily try to do good. But I think for women, we need to hone in on what that really means. Being powerful means being a leader. It's being taken seriously by my colleagues. And I think women just get things done. We don't overthink something. We just try to get to a solution. We're constantly trying to come up with a compromise or a solution so that we can get things done. A couple of weeks ago, I hosted a Latino health summit for young women at City Hall. And the reason I did this is because in talking to young women, I noticed, and I'm 46 years old, and I haven't taken great care of myself. What I would like for us to begin to think, and I wanted to have a conversation with young women in particular, is what does being healthy look like? When are we going to finally take some time to ourselves? We spent our 20s overthinking about what we want to do professionally, and then our 30s is like, oh my goodness, I'm not married or have kids, what does that mean? And then in the 40s, we finally reached our career goals, but we've noticed that over the last 20 years, we could have taking better care of ourselves. And what does that look like? And I tell women that we can do it all without having to do it all. And I think that's an important conversation for us to begin to have, that there is nothing wrong with being ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with us wanting to be powerful. That's something positive. I think we think of power in a very different way than men. I think that we have got to hone in on what that means, and we've got to be able to tell our young women that even if you think you want it, or even if you think at 25 years old that it is impossible, you've got to start thinking about how you're going to get there, but stop worrying so much about the fact that you don't have it by the time you're 25. And I think we spend so much time worrying about what that looks like, that by the time you get my age, you look back and you think, well, that was stupid. Maybe I should have just taken a little bit more time and taken better care of myself and not taken certain things for granted, because eventually you're going to get there. How you get there might be a longer road than perhaps me or perhaps you, but eventually we'll all get there. And I think it's really important for us to hone in on the fact that, we can have it all without doing it all, and we can't get there but we need to make sure that we take care of our well-being. And I think for so many of us, that sometimes looks like you're either weak or you're lazy or you're taking it easy or you're not trying to get through it quick enough. And I think for so many of us, especially at 46, I think I done a better job of just being more conscious about taking better care of myself and giving myself that time.
I think that's great advice. Rashmi, what are your thoughts?
I think both Diana and Nuri have, talked about success and ambition quite well. Probably I'll try to answer the second bit of your question about the differences in young men and women in looking at their career trajectory. And maybe I'll do that by giving, two examples. A couple of years back, I had just given a growth opportunity for a young woman. She had just gotten married. And the opportunity required her get out of her comfort zone, maybe travel a bit and stuff. And she was excited about it, and she thought about it. A day later, she came back and she said, Rashmi, can I tell you this? I just got married. I think we want to settle down, have kids. And she declined the opportunity. And I was so disappointed that this young lady already had made a career decision in a life event which had not even happened. And I think women tend to do that, because we make an assumption that 2 years from now I'm going to have a child and I want to be a mother and spend time and sometimes not accept the opportunities. I think the conversations need to be different, like when you are at that point and there is a life decision that needs to happen, then engage in those conversations with your leaders and managers. So that's one thing I see difference in young men and women. A young man, he might be about to have a kid tomorrow, and he'll be like, yeah, got it, I'm in. Where do I sign up? So I think that's a big difference that I see. The other one is when you're applying for a job, right? A man will see 2 of the requirement of the 10 and say, yeah, God, I'm well suited for this job. I'm going for the interview. A woman would look, she'll have 5 of the 10, and she'll be like, oh no, I'm not qualified. And I think that's the other thing we need to stop is that you are, and give yourself a chance, take a bet on yourself, like, the Lieutenant Governor said.
Yep. I think this is great advice. And we've been talking a little bit about culture and the changes in the workplace culture. And I think there's a lot of discussion in this day and age about millennials and the Generation Z and the other generations of young folks that are coming forward. And they tend to be different. And I think some of the things we're talking a little bit about here are reflected in the values that we're seeing in younger people as they come into the workforce. They tend to want a more flexible and collaborative and value-driven corporate culture. And do you think that's a generational shift, or do you think it also reflects on the fact that there are more women in the workplace? And so our values are starting to trickle down. And I'm going to start with Rashmi, because you and I have talked about this a little bit already. So I'd love for you to share your thoughts on this subject with our group here today.
So I think it's a bit of both. I think this generation believes more than ever of having a holistic approach to professional life. You want to work for a socially, culturally conscious company. You want to get value from the company, but you also want to give back to the community, to the environment, to the world at large. So I'm fortunate at Parsons. You were mentioning the bridge. I had the opportunity to go with 10 of my colleagues to Bolivia this summer to build a pedestrian footbridge. Now, we are a company who design transportation solutions. That's what we do every day. But going there physically, pulling cable, doing masonry work, putting brick together to build this bridge that transformed a small village who could not cross this bridge more than 30%, of the year. Can you imagine standing and thinking, oh my God, I cannot get home, or I cannot cross the river with my child to give her or him medical care because it's so unsafe. It was incredibly gratifying and humbling, right? I came back with the feeling how much good we have here, but how important it was to do more of that. So I encourage, as you look at your opportunities for your career, match it to what you would like in life. And if giving back and part of community engagement or, engaging on the political arena, those things are important. Join a company, join a team that allows you to do that. That's important. Allowing you the schedule to do that, because many of this thing you're doing on your own time. And that's time taking away from your kids or your husband.
Nuri, you have a lot of young people that work on your staff and on volunteering on your campaigns. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things you've observed and the differences between the future generations of leaders.
So the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I do have a very young staff. The majority of my staff are millennials. The majority of them are women. And so one of the, the fact that they're very driven by their values and that they want to make their communities a better place are all things that I welcome, because there are things that we actually have in common. And so these are all, they all want to be collaborative. They all want to come up with solutions, and everyone wants to get along. But I want to tell a story about millennials, because this happened right after when Hillary Clinton was running. I have an internship program in my office called Ready for Women. And it's only for women, and it's for college students who want to run for office one day. That's really the only requirement. And so I've now had 23 women go through my internship program, and they actually get paid, and it's over the summer. I don't believe in free labor. I do try to pay these folks as much as I can. But in the interview process during the Hillary Clinton, during Hillary and Bernie running against each other, what I was experiencing in some of my interviews is that the younger women did not really understand the historical significance of getting a woman elected to the White House. There was such a disconnect between this historical moment in time and what it meant for women my age to finally see a woman be nominated in a major party to become president. There was a disconnect, not only with that, but there was a disconnect when it also came to gender parity, equal pay, job discrimination issues. There doesn't seem to be a connection between, because they haven't lived long enough to have experienced what it is to get passed over by a man. To get passed over because you chose to have a family, and so that promotion isn't going to you because that guy has a wife that's going to figure out how to take care of those kids, and he's going to show up and be committed to the job 7 days out of the week, and you're probably going to be pulled away to be able to do the mommy thing at home. And so unless you have those lived experiences, it's hard for you to relate. So I used to find myself kind of challenging them and pushing back and saying, do you understand that what it's taken for us to get to this level? The fact that there's two women in the largest city in the United States, two women in the largest city in the United States, women make up 52% of the population in Los Angeles, and there's only two women on the LA City Council? That's embarrassing and pathetic. And we still can't seem to get a woman elected to mayor or city attorney, two major citywide offices. And so my frustration has been is that, as much as I love and value young people in my office, and they come with wealth of energy and they look at the world a little differently, we also need to take our time to educate our young women of the struggles of those of us who have had it difficult, who've had to figure out how to get that promotion, who've had to figure out how to pay for college, had to figure out how to pay 2 jobs to pay that student loan. These things have all come at a cost. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by diminishing those older women who have paved the way. And we need to acknowledge the fact that things are easier for women, sort of, kind of, but we also have to acknowledge we have so much more work to do when it comes to young people. I treasure them, I love them, but nothing comes easy and nothing is free. And we all have to work really hard. And I think that in my office, we try to sort of level the playing field. But that presidential election in 2016 really taught me a huge lesson. Young people do not understand, not all of them understand the struggles for women in this country, especially for women who've run for office in the past.
Deanna, I'm going to ask you to answer this question, but before I turn it over to you, I want folks in the audience, I'm going to take some Q&A. So if you have a burning question, it's going to be your time. Deanna, talk to us a little bit about your experience with some of the younger generation in your workplace.
So, as I said, we always like to hire a diverse set of backgrounds for all of our positions. We look very broadly to try to fill our roles. And a few years ago, I had a millennial who reported to me that had just worked for me for a couple of years. And he came in for his annual review, and he said, "So, how do you like managing a millennial?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to manage you any differently. How do you like working for a baby boomer?" And, it's just kind of, it's interesting, the perspectives are so different with the younger generations, and truly it's really about the skill set you bring to the job, what you value, what your employer values, and as far as more flexible work schedules and supporting women, it also supports more men to stay at home. And so we like to have a really equal view of these more flexible schedules that we give. So we, for example, we give a 80-hour work week, two-week work week, 80 hours in 9 days, and then the 10th day is off because you worked your 80 hours. So that gives everyone the flexibility to have their personal time with their family or doctor appointments, whatever. So it's just more important generally as the marketplace for new talent gets more competitive in Southern California. We find that we have to offer the same benefits as many of the other employers around. So that's what we do.
Great. All right, is there any questions from the audience here today? This is your chance. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Shauna Carter with Child Care Resource Center. This is a personal question. I'm raising 2 young boys.
Thank you, Stuart, for that.
This way. Hi, Shauna Carter. I'm raising 2 young boys, and they're seeing in this day and age women way more forward than what has been in the past. But without going into the whole history lesson with them, I'd like your advice on how to make them understand why they're seeing girls so much more than they are seeing boys, with like princesses on the Disney station, all of these things. I get questions almost daily, Mommy, why is it all about the girls? Yeah, I just like to hear some thoughts.
Where do your kids go to school? Maybe they go to school with my kid. So we don't play with princesses and dolls at my house. That's sort of been my rule. But so, you know what's interesting, because, you know, my parents got married later in life, and I talk about my parents all the time because I got the greatest set of parents I could have ever asked for. But my mother's will be 82 next year. And so at my house, it was very common that my mother was basically who ruled our house, and my father was very comfortable with taking a seat back. And I married a guy who's very much like my father, who's very comfortable with women being in charge and women in power positions. It doesn't take anything away from him. So in my house, of course, my kid was going to turn out like, you know, like me. But it's interesting you raise that question, because she's also struggling with the same thing in school, where the little girls in her class are so much more outspoken. And the little boys are struggling with that. In fact, we just had that conversation a couple of weeks ago. Is like her concern is how do we make the boys in my class not be scared of us? And I said, well, why would he be scared of you? What did you say? Or what did you do? And it's sort of, there is that, you know, it's sort of in class, the way it's playing out at my daughter's school is that the girls, it's a STEM school. So it's very much geared around science and math. And girls are finally, my generation of girls, you know, I certainly didn't feel comfortable in math because I kind of sucked at it, but even my friends who were really good in math just didn't have those role models and were not told at home or at school that they could become engineers and so on and so forth. So in that conversation in my daughter's class, the teacher is basically doing the history lesson of what it's taken women to get this far, and that it doesn't take anything away from the boys if the women are just as competitive and just as smart and just as capable. We all have to build a better world, and the way to do it is by having men and women at the table with equal rights. And so that's how we talk about it. I think I only have one daughter. I didn't have any boys. I wish I would have had a boy, because, you know, that would have been interesting. But
you have, I believe you have 13 of them.
John's a teenager.
Sorry.
Anyway, so I mean, in a nutshell, I don't really, you know, know what to. I mean, that's how we're dealing with it in class. But it's interesting your boys are having that same outlook or opinion, because in my daughter's class, that's very much the opinion. There are 5 really tough girls in that class, and they hold their own. And the boys are struggling with what to do with these 5 girls. And in some cases, we have to have a conversation about what that looks like. And moving forward, you're going to probably end up with 10 girls next year with the same personalities of just taking charge, taking names, and kicking butt.
All right. Are there any other questions, or did anyone else on the panel want to respond?
I think all I would add is I'm encouraged by that.
I know.
I think that's exciting. And maybe around 50 years, we'll need to have a men's panel. I think I'm predicting the future.
A therapy session for men. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Stuart asked if he was allowed to come, and Jessica and I had to discuss it for a while.
And Stuart could be the keynote speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Hold on just a sec. We've got Elizabeth coming with the mic.
I just want to add something to what she said. I'm Nama, and last night I was fortunate to spend some time with Gloria Stein, and it was incredible because she's talking about like be careful of not becoming the man you want to marry, and I thought this is really kind of interesting because you guys mentioned the boys that we are raising, and they are actually seeing a very strong, leadership, and then what's going to happen to the next generation? Because it seems like people are having difficulties meeting each other and marrying and getting into responsibility of having families, and the values changed. So just want to hear your opinion if you.
Values change you mean women are going to have a harder time finding a man because they're strong?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and just being soft about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to really also be enlightened this way.
Well, I'm pretty strong, and I found a husband.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a question in the back of the room here. Yes, you. Hi. I don't know. Jessica, can you? Thank you.
It was more of a comment about a strong woman. So I'm a strong woman, and it's funny, growing up in a Latino family from El Monte, California, I always was taught that the woman should stay home and cook. Well, all my career, I've always worked super extra hard, but I think that's just my resilience, and I have a very supporting husband, and he's the one that's been home with my kids, cooking and supporting me. And so now I have this career that I'm very proud of, and I am a very strong woman. And actually, my kids, being all three teenagers, well, actually, yes, all teenagers, no older adults. Excuse me, I have my youngest 18-year-old. They actually see me, and when they talk about me, they talk about my mother. We're so proud of her. She's a strong woman, and we have a great dad that cooks the best. So that's amazing. So thank you, women. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kelly, and I'm with the LAX Coastal Chamber. And being with the Chamber, which thank you guys very much, and being a part of, well, we're not a part of CSUN, but working with the colleges, one of the things that I'm finding is I'm trying to get our college students more involved in our chamber. And so in doing that, both women and men, obviously, I want to find out what you guys have done as VICTA to bridge that gap and bring it together, because I also think that's very important. And we have a young professionals group, and I'm now starting to reach out to LMU and Otis, because that's where we're located, and I'm now starting to reach out to them to make this collaboration happen. And I love what you guys have done here, so I want to applaud you for that.
Oh, thank you. And a wonderful leader at the LAX Coastal Chamber, Christina Davis. She's amazing. So, well, I'll answer the question just because you asked about how we brought this group together. I think we're extremely fortunate. VICA is very fortunate to have CSUN as a partner, a very strong partner with us as an organization in general. And they are they're such a huge part of the community here in the San Fernando Valley. And it was so easy. I mean, I think we all sort of came to the same idea at the same time, to say that this was a great opportunity for us to talk about women in business in particular. And so it was a very easy collaboration. And I'm actually really grateful for the students that are here today. And I'm hoping that you guys are really getting something out of this experience. You are witnessing some of the greatest women in leadership here talking about how they deal with everyday life, and a lot of the challenges that the students that are facing here
are all challenges that we have faced to get here today. So I think just reaching out and maybe saying to, and certainly, LMU is an amazing partner. I sit on their Center for the Study of Los Angeles board, and they are very committed and engaged in the community, and I know that they would be really excited to partner with you. So, and if not, you can just shame them and say, CSUN did it. So, but we are very fortunate to have such an amazing partner in CSUN. So that was easy. Made it a little easier. And then, Wendy Gruhl, force of nature. That's right. Are there any other questions? Yes.
He has one more question.
There's one more.
Don't do that.
There's one more question right there.
She had her hand up.
Gorgeous lady.
Look, there's one right here.
Every day, Stuart.
Hi, my name is Lynette. I'm a CSUN student in my final year.
See?
I have more of a question, like a personal question to ask. I wrote it down just in case I don't forget.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
So I have, do you have any advice for women looking to stepping into the gaming industry, since it isn't very common to see like a female in the industry? It's more of a male dominance industry. Because right now, like I have a passion for video games. I'm just trying to find a route to go into it. It's more of a like it's heavily dominated in males. So I'm not sure like how to get or take a first step into the industry.
Well, most of the tech companies that I am aware of and that I'm working with are really focused on bringing more women to the table here. And I know, Nuri, that you've done a lot of partnerships with women in STEM and STEAM. And I'm not sure if you or Rashmi or know if you guys have any ideas about ways in which she could engage. Certainly reaching out. VICA has, as its members, we have Amazon and Microsoft, and so we do have some really the most important tech companies, and I'm sure we'd be more than happy to connect you with some of our members who are in that space and maybe can give you some ideas. But ladies, anybody here have some thoughts for?
I mean, to me, it's, so I'm in a male-dominated field. I've been in politics since I was 14 years old, in a sense, but I think the most important thing is relationships. And I think in my career in particular, I think it's about networking and who you know. And so if you want to, it's the gaming industry, is that what you said? I would just, is there an internship opportunity in any of these gaming companies? I mean, sometimes you're going to have to work for free before anybody, so that you can show off your talent. And so I would suggest just connecting with any of these gaming companies and just interning, see if you can spend some time with folks there, and then find a mentor that's going to help you open doors and help you introduce yourself to that industry. You got to put yourself out there. That's the only way I can tell you. Mm-hmm. You have to put yourself out there. It's intimidating, it's scary, and all that is real, but you're just going to have to just say, you know what, I'm good enough and I belong here, and there's a space for women in this industry. Just open your own door sometimes.
That is good advice. All right, well, I know we could probably go on all day. I know I could, listening to these ladies, but I would like to thank our panelists again for their time today. Thank you. And I have some lovely gifts for you.
Let me guess, Stuart's picture?
No, because you were already privileged enough to have that.
No, Stuart had us at a luncheon a couple of months ago. And the parting gift was a framed picture, autographed picture of Stuart Wallman.
Could you tell the group how you reacted to the question, or to the gift, Councilmember Martinez?
I don't want to get into it. I should not curse on the mic.
Thank you, ladies, so much. And let's give them all a round of applause again.